Good morning, my dear brothers and sisters. Today's gospel mentions something that can actually stir up controversy. Jesus says that he does not pray for the world, but only for the ones that have been given him. Let's not rush into making assumptions as to what Jesus means by these words. But first, let us take a look at the gospel. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus raised his eyes to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Give glory to your Son, so that your Son may glorify you, just as you gave him authority over all people, so that your Son may give eternal life to all you gave him. Now this is eternal life, that they should know you, the only true God, and the one whom you sent, Jesus Christ. I glorified you on earth by accomplishing the work that you gave me to do. Now glorify me, Father, with you, with the glory that I had with you before the world began. I have revealed your name to those whom you gave me out of the world. They belong to you, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you gave me is from you, because the words you gave to me I have given to them, and they accepted them and truly understood that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for the ones you have given me, because they are yours, and everything of mine is yours, and everything of yours is mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I will no longer be in the world, but they are in the world, while I am coming to you. The Gospel of the Lord. So again, Jesus says in this Gospel that he doesn't pray for the world, but for those that the Father has given him. Now, this might make us wonder, if Jesus does not pray for the world, doesn't it contradict the fact that Jesus laid down his life for all of us, for all of humanity? So if Jesus does not pray for the world, does it mean that some are excluded? Does it mean that Jesus only laid down his life for a selected few? Well, it might seem so, but that is not true. That is not what this gospel is suggesting today. Now you see, Jesus lays down his life for all of humanity, for the entire world, for the salvation of the world. But at the same time, it is a grace that has been given to us. But this grace is cooperative in nature. For us to gain the salvation that Jesus has granted us through his sacrifice on the cross for us, we ought to cooperate with the grace that has been given us. And cooperation with this grace comes through believing in Jesus, through accepting him as the Messiah, believing that he was sent by the Father into the world, believing that Jesus and the Father are one, and that to have seen Jesus is to have seen the Father. Living and practicing the commandments that Jesus has given us. This is how we cooperate with the grace that has been given us through the triumph over death by Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection. Now, you see, in the beginning of this gospel, Jesus mentioned the fact that eternal life, has been given to all that the Father gave Jesus. And Jesus has given authority to his disciples to go forth and make disciples of all nations. And we heard this gospel on the Ascension Thursday when Jesus was being lifted up to his Father. He told his disciples, go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Trinity, and then teaching them all that I have commanded you. So obviously, before Jesus was lifted up to his Father, he had not spread the good news to all the corners of the earth. But those that had come to believe in Jesus were certain of the fact that he came from the Father, and that he was the Messiah, he was the Redeemer of the universe, and that he, Jesus, is God. They had come to believe this message. And now Jesus is telling them that he prays to the Father for them because they have come to believe this good news. But Jesus goes on to say something that is very essential for us to understand from this gospel. Jesus says, I do not pray for the world, but for the ones you have given me, because they are yours. And he goes on to say, and everything of mine is yours. Everything that is Jesus is the Father's. And everything that is the Father's is Jesus. So it's not just one way, but it's both ways. Everything that is the Father's is Jesus's, and everything that is Jesus's is the Father's. Now, Jesus has commissioned his disciples to go forth and make disciples of all nations. That means that Jesus wants the entire world to be included. So he says to his Father that he is no longer in the world because he is coming back to the Father, but his disciples are in the world. And Jesus has commissioned his disciples to make disciples of all nations. So even though Jesus is not praying for the world at this time, because he is praying for those that have come to believe and accept him as God, as the Messiah, as the Son of the Father, he is nevertheless also praying for whoever will come to believe in the good news that his disciples are going to preach. Whoever is going to become a disciple following the preaching of the disciples is still part of whom the Father has given Jesus. So even though this gospel might seem to suggest that Jesus is referring to a selected few, it includes everyone, both in the present and in the future, who will come to believe in the good news, who will come to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that Jesus was sent to the world by the Father, and that everything he gives us, he receives from the Father. So my dear brothers and sisters, when we hear this gospel, it is not for us to panic, but it is for us to rejoice and be glad if we believe in this message, and we know that we are part of the group that Jesus is referring to when he says, I pray for those that you have given me. Because Jesus is ready to pray for the entire world, as long as we cooperate with the grace that has been given us, the grace that brings salvation. Have a great day, and God bless you.